Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. My name is Suleiman Suleiman. Zoning and consensus candidacy are so far defining the 2023 elections. But the politics of zoning and consensus candidates have not been easy in either of the ruling party nor in the opposition. For example, while the APC has zoned the position of the national chairman to the North Central, and the president has reportedly endorsed a consensus candidate, many aspirants for that position are still in the race. The PDP has hardly fared better. The zoning of the national chairmanship to the same North Central and the emergence of the Dr. Iyorchia Ayu in October as a consensus chairman of the party were largely rancor-free. But zoning the presidency or agreeing a consensus presidential candidate has proved rather difficult for the PDP, even after retreats in faraway Ghana. However, this weekend, three of the leading contenders for the presidency of the party converged in Bauchi, reportedly working towards agreeing a consensus candidate between them. These are former Senate President Bukola Saraki, Governor of Sokoto State and former Speaker of the House of Representatives Aminu Tambuwal, and of course, the two were hosted by the Governor of Bauchi State and former FCT Minister Bala Mohammed. But earlier today, leaders of the party's Southwest Caucus met and insisted that the presidential ticket of the party be zoned to the south. This was after leaders of the same party in the South-South had demanded the same. And in response to that, Governor Tambuwal reportedly told his colleagues down south that they must choose between zoning and winning the elections. So tonight we're asking, will the PDP have a consensus presidential candidate, and who will that candidate be? Can Saraki, Tambuwal, and Bala Mohammed speak for the rest of the presidential aspirants? Indeed, what is the fate of zoning in Nigerian politics more broadly? With me to discuss these issues are Mr. Ilemona Onoja, who is Senior Special Assistant on Communication to Dr. Bukola Saraki. And also with me is Dr. Kachi Ononuju, who is Director General, Heritage Center, Abuja. Heritage Center is a think tank in doing research on issues around politics, economics, and many others. You're much welcome to Daily Politics, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. But we'll take just a short break. When we return, we'll go straight into it to bring you analysis of what zoning means to the PDP, how it might play out in the PDP, and how indeed it affects also the ruling APC. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we are discussing issues around zoning. Zoning right now appears to be an issue that has engulfed both parties, both the ruling party as well as the opposition PDP. But today, we're discussing zoning within the opposition PDP. But maybe we should start about what it means to Nigeria as a whole. Is it something that, we thought that after the politics of 2011, in which zoning was also quite loud in the elections, we thought that it wasn't so loud in 2015 or 2019, as it was in 2011. So we thought maybe we have moved ahead of zoning. Why are we caught up again in discussions around zoning? Dr. Kati.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for this. Our country, Nigeria, is fundamentally built on zoning. So when we formed our party, the PDP, the PDP was also foundationally built upon zoning. That's why if we have a chairman from the north, the deputy chairman must come from the south. If you have a chairman from, a secretary from the west, the other person, assistant secretary, will also have to come from the alternate side. And that's how we were. So we had an issue when there was an incumbent president, President Goodluck, and he just succeeded Yar'Adua after Yar'Adua passed on. And some were saying he has to give way. So he wouldn't stay there. And so some members of our party, in particular called MPDP, formed a caucus and said, we must respect the zoning, that our party is foundationally built upon zoning. And that argument was agreed to by a lot of Nigerians. And with the MPDP, coalitions were built across country, which bettered the Buhari presidency. President Buhari promised those members that formed that thing with him that he would do a term. So they were comfortable. But as politicians, they now saw as he went in, he was already planned for second term. So out of anger, they came back to the PDP. The PDP allowed them to take the 2019 ticket. I went and I traveled. I was working with the gentleman at the Saraki campaign. Later on, I traveled to 35 states with Vice President Atiku Abubakar. But then after that, it went the way it went. He went to Dubai, and afterwards, the Buhari presidency has now concluded. Because zoning is between the north and south.
Okay.
No matter the vehicle you use to achieve it, we follow the national political clock. Now that President Buhari's 8 years of rule has come to an end, everybody now believes the zoning now takes it to the south. But those members of our party who were disappointed by President Buhari, who came back, were now insisting that they had a deal with our former chairman, Mr. Secondus, that he will stay on so that they can also run for the presidency. If that happens, it means the North will get 16 years and the South will not have anything. Yet, our democracy is
Mr.
built
Illumina,
upon...
let me bring your partner into the discussion.
Yes.
Because he says in the 16 years that the PDP were in power, PDP specifically, in the 16 years that they were in power, you had Obasanjo's 8 years.
That's not what we say.
Yar'Adua was 2 years.
Yes.
And Jonathan's 5 years, more or less. So it was largely a southern presidency, which is why some people are saying if you are even going to zone in the PDP, it should not be going back to the south, even though you have a Buhari presidency. Do you subscribe, your team, do they subscribe to that argument?
We subscribe to a completely different argument.
Please go ahead.
Our argument is that at this time, the issues that face the country now are very separate from the issues that faced the country at the formation of the PDP in 1998. Nigeria faces an existential crisis. We are having a conversation about whether we're going to continue to exist as a country. We have record unemployment. We have record insecurity. We have record distrust between the North and the South. Record distrust between the two primary faiths, Christianity and Islam. We have a disillusionment. We have two wars. A war against terror in the Northeast, a war against terror in the Northwest. We have a militia invading the North Central, taking over homes and farms. We have one agitation for separation in the southeast. You have another agitation for separation in the southwest.
Okay.
Now, with the plethora of problems that exist, right? The question should be, and this is where we subscribe to,
Okay.
how best do we resolve these issues? Who best to lead us into a resolution of these issues? That's fundamentally what we believe we should be talking about. Okay. Not what language people speak, where they're from, which God they worship. Because the issues that plague us, I'll come there. The issues that plague us, the insecurity, doesn't ask whether we're Christian or we're Muslim, whether we're Northern or we're Southern. It worries us. The unemployment worries us equally. Now, if you have a conversation about it, if you even go back to the beginning, it's called a power sharing arrangement. You share power when you have power. It is the responsibility of the party in power to share. The job, the objective of the opposition is to win an election. It's to win an election. How do you win an election? You ask yourselves, amongst your leaders, who is our best candidate that we can put forward that has the acceptability, the name recognition across the country, the cross-country network that can help us win the election. And then after we've picked that person at the head of the ticket, we can follow everything else. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that zoning is wrong. It has its merits. What I'm saying is that in the context of our current national conversation, it must not be the sole determining factor. It simply cannot be.
Who picks the ticket of a party?
One final point. We'll
come back to that. The arguments are now quite clear, but part of the wider argument, either particularly within the PDP, because today it's PDP we're more interested in, that, okay, part of the problems that caused the agitations in the Southeast, that you are talking about, is a sense of exclusion.
Exactly.
That people have had over the years.
Yes.
And that if you're going to ignore those feelings again, it doesn't matter whether you have power or what you do with it, because these are not issues of politics or economy. They're also about emotional connection to the national conversation.
Of course.
So does that, how does that
What
work?
you've captured is exactly what it is. What you're trying to say is that we run a representative democracy. You see? Issues of justice, equity, and fairness. These are not just mere words. No, these are foundational perspectives. Every society that must have unity and peace must have equity, fairness, and justice. Without it, you will have mayhem. That's why you heard, as you rightly said at the beginning, that the people in the north, in the southwest, the south central, they all have voted for a certain candidate. As I'm speaking to you, all our governors have agreed. It goes to the south for the sake of the country. That's why I told you it's got nothing to do with politics. It's about national unity, maintaining the Nigerian project. If people feel, like you said, excluded, we'll have problems. Let me be honest. None of the elderly people have the capacity to stop the youth. So for us now to calm the youth in these agitations you talked about earlier, let them feel that their people are also part of the Nigerian story. And that's why we say we do not have the capabilities to fend these youth who are going, as he said, for agitation. And the only way we can do it is let them have that sense of inclusion in the Nigerian project. That's why I tell you, it's got nothing to do with politics. It's about Nigeria.
Okay.
So let everybody have a sense of belonging. Don't forget, as we're talking about, he's talking about capability. Nobody has the capabilities as the candidates we have in the South. Look at Peter Obi. Look at that. Look at Pius Anyim. Look at Mao Huabongwa. See people like Governor Wike and all that. Do you understand? And we have several people. We have the quality, we seek inclusion. We want the Nigerian project to continue.
There's
point is
there's
well
no-
taken.
There's no, there's,
Okay.
but-
We
but
do
hold
not
on.
want to damage
allow
Nigeria
him to
based
speak.
on the desperation of
Just
individuals.
give him a moment as well. Go on.
That is,
Respond.
and I see these things and I hear these arguments. But we must correct something.
Okay.
And I will correct it for you. The zoning principle was founded in recognition of foundational injustice
Okay.
because power concentrated, right? And then the injustice is developmental projects, growth, development, the dividends of rule are not given to people are not given to parts of the country whose leaders or where the leader, the president, is not from. So a president from the south contains a president from the north, or from the south, concentrates power. His appointments are largely in one area. Most of the projects are largely in one area. And then it leads this sense where people believe that unless my person is president, I will not feel the benefits of governance. That's the foundational injustice around which the agitation for zoning is. If there's an equitable distribution of appointments, if there's an equitable distribution of resources, if there's an equitable distribution of contribution, right? People will not feel hard done by. People will not feel cheated. So zoning was introduced to balance out structural imbalances that existed at the time. But you know what? Where we are in the country,
So
I'm
this
coming.
raises the question. Was it a one-off? No,
I'm coming. It's not a one-off thing.
Was it supposed to be a one-off thing to address historical injustices, or was it supposed to be rolling over time?
It was supposed to roll over time.
Okay.
Right? But you've gotten to a place where the entire nation is on the brink. It's about to tip over. Now, we're saying, and don't get me wrong, there's capacity everywhere. There's capacity to rule this country, to lead this country everywhere. We're saying, discuss that capacity. Don't discuss where the person is from. Excuse me. Discuss that capacity. That should be the focus. The ability. That should be the focus. You shouldn't be saying to a nation as poor as ours, you shouldn't be saying to a nation as insecure as ours, you shouldn't be saying to a nation where its citizens are as unemployed as ours, that if there is somebody from a part of the country, right? Let us not consider the person simply because of where the person is from or the God the person worships. That's the argument. Now, if we're going to talk about equity, if we're going to talk about fairness, if we're going to talk about justice, we must take certain things into consideration. Of Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones, 4 have had the opportunity within the PDP to produce a presidential candidate. 4. They are the Southwest, President Olusegun Obasanjo, the Northwest, former late President, God bless his soul, Shehu Musa Yar'Adua,
Okay.
the
Northeast.
South,
Okay.
President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Northeast, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. The Southeast and the North Central never produced a candidate, a presidential candidate.
So are you saying that it should be zoned to them now?
If we're saying, no, let's speak about equity and justice.
Okay.
If we're now going to speak about equity and justice, in the history of not only the PDP, in the history of Nigeria, the North Central has never produced a vice president, a vice presidential candidate, a democratically elected president, a presidential candidate in a democratic era. So if we're going to be talking about equity and justice, why are we talking about giving this thing to the North Central? Seeing as they have never had the opportunity to have a conversation at that level. Yet, you cannot win the presidency of this country without winning the North Central. It is impossible.
Thank you. So this brings us to questions of what people want and what they can get.
Yes.
Within a national context such as ours, because for one, it's nice to want zoning, for example, to have, like he said, to have the presidency of the PDP or any other party zoned to the North Central, for example, or the Southeast, which, as he says, have not had it.
They've had it.
But,
they've had it.
Okay.
They've had longer than any zone.
You can
the Northeast, the North Central has had the largest enjoyment of power.
democratically elected power.
Listen, our laws today that govern
Democratically elected
us,
power.
our laws that govern us today are laws made over the last 60 years. Every single law made by General Gowon, by President Babangida, by General Abdul Salami Abubakar, were not expunged. They're still in our law books. So of the 60 years of rule, the North Central must have had a longer rule than anyone else. Now let's keep that aside, because you cannot talk about Nigeria without talking about inception. The only people he's saying that have not had the #1 spec in this thing we're talking now is the Southeast.
Interesting.
Now, if we are saying, if the North is also part of the North Central, when it comes back to the North, because zoning is between the North and the South, no matter the vehicle used to achieve it, we just follow the national political clock. If it goes here, we follow it. That's why now that it has gone to the South, most people in the Southeast say it is our turn, because the South has had President Goodluck, as he said. The
But
Southwest has had Obasanjo. Yes.
Part of the argument some people are making, even if they agree on zoning, is that the last PDP president was somebody from the South.
The last PDP
So,
president,
and that's what matters.
The last
you know,
PDP
rather
president,
than-
listen.
Yes.
The last PDP president is President Buhari.
The last PDP.
The last PDP president is President Buhari. No,
Explain.
President
No,
Buhari
let him
was.
explain.
Let me help you, please. The PDP caucus called MPDP. Without MPDP, Buhari will not be president. You know that. So it's just that when President Buhari
Some would say without
disappointed them.
ACN, without CPC,
Well, thank
you know, without
now you're-
ANPP, without
Good.
APGA,
Okay.
Now
without
you are
many of
talking.
this, he would not be
That
president
is
either.
when PDP
So,
members participated in that
NPDP
coalition.
cannot be singled out.
MPDP was part of the coalition. Now, is the problem? MPDP agreed on the coalition, but because, as I said earlier, President Buhari deceived them when he said he would do
I'm
one term,
sorry,
and
but
he
this
said
is
he would.
wrong.
Now he's doing 2 terms.
I'm
Let
sorry.
me finish, please.
for
We are
the
all
benefits of
Nigerians.
our
So
viewers,
you can't.
Buhari
Buhari
has
would not be
never been in
president
the PDP.
without the MPDP. That's why I tell you, Buhari is a national president.
It's okay.
Buhari was brought there by a coalition which included a PDP caucus called MPDP.
One moment then. Yeah, thank you. So the
President
question
Buhari is the last PDP president.
that's all right. The issue is, what about strategy? Because it's fine for you to know that Peter Obi is the perfect candidate for Nigeria. It's fine for you to know, you know, that others from down south are. But Nigeria is a huge country. And some people that are popular in one part of the country may not be so popular in other parts of the country. For example, Buhari 2003, 2007, 2011, and so on, you know?
Until the PDP members come there, and that's how he became
until 2015. 2015 and 2019.
Without
That-
MPDP,
they
Buhari would
had
never be president.
Coalition. So how would this work out within the PDP? I'm
Let me
talking
tell you,
about the
I'd
question
like-
of
I'd like-
strategy.
I'd like to
The
answer that
strategy we
question.
have is very
I'd
simple.
like
No,
to
no, no.
answer
He's-
I'd like
he's
to
to
answer
answer.
that
Yes,
question.
please.
It is unfortunate that we are inheriting compulsorily a problem that ought not to be our problem. It's a power sharing arrangement. When you have power, you share it. And I'll tell you what the outcome of that is. I'll give you some history. 2003, constant. President Buhari, didn't matter that the president at the time was from the South. 2007, constant. President Buhari, didn't matter, he was contesting against a co-northerner.
Against someone from his own state.
From his own state. 2011, constant. President Buhari, didn't matter that we were against South. What I'm saying to you, at the time, the opposition kept looking for who best they thought could win them an election. That's where we heard the famous phrase, Buhari had 12 million votes in his pocket. The opposition stayed constant. What you were doing while you were in power, going north to south, was not their business. They remained constant until 2015 when he won that election. Right? Why are you inheriting a problem that the opposition, that is defining the narrative for you, refused to inherit when they were in opposition? Were they plagued by this problem? Did you hear any conversation about zoning in the opposition from 2003, 2007, 2011, and 2015? Did you hear any conversation about that? No. Why? The objective of an opposition party is to put its most likely candidate to garner votes across the country forward. When you do that, you can say, okay, so his vice president will come from here. Oh, the Senate president will come from here. Oh, the Speaker of the House will come from here. Oh, the Secretary General of the Federation will come from here. That is where you zone. But until that point, your objective is one singular thing. Who is my candidate that can win me this election? That is the fundamental, that is the most important, that is the most vital objective of any opposition party.
Dr. Kachi, I don't know if you noticed that two definitions of zoning have come out of this our discussion.
Okay.
In one's definition, you know, the one being championed by you is zoning as rotational presidency, turn by turn kind of zoning. And in the other definition is zoning as power sharing. Zoning comes after power has been taken, not before it, after you have won the election.
Yes.
In the other one, it is part of the processes that leads to winning the election or losing it. But in his definition, after you have won the election, which do you think is best for PDP now?
His definition is based on his own thoughts. Because one man's champion could be another man's devil. You know that.
Yes.
Good. If I ask him now, who does he think he has the best prospect? He will tell me, of course, his principal. Good. And if you now ask me, who do I think is the best? I will tell you that the best could be Pius Anyim, could be Peter Obi, could be Ohabunwa, could be anybody from the South.
Yes.
You understand this? But the reality on the ground is that the Nigerian president is normally sorted out by consensus. Once he appears, the stakeholders across the country pass the signals. Right now, as I'm talking to you, leaders are discussing Nigeria and the African Union. President Obasanjo told us during his birthday celebration that it took less than 1 decade after the end of the Nigerian Civil War for them to bring in Vice President Alex Okwueme as a strategy of nation building. That's why I said at the beginning, nation building is hinged on justice, equity, and fairness. These are not just words. These are foundational perspectives. So if you now want to say you want to rule and you have no regard for justice, equity, and fairness, you are an enemy of society. Because without justice, equity, and fairness, you will never have peace or unity in any society. Now, and these candidates that came back from NPDP, none of them has spectacular qualities, you say, Nigeria. No, nothing. Where the people with the real qualities are is down south. So why are you not telling me this? No,
but
listen,
in
we
the
cannot use the...
in the nature of politics.
Yes.
I'm very sorry, but
if in the nature of politics...
Can I make...
Please,
well,
just...
a correction there. A correction there. It's a correction.
Do you understand what I'm telling you? Everybody will say his champion is
important.
the best.
Okay, respond.
It's important.
Just 1 minute so that we can go on a break and take a breather and calm down before we come back.
It's important to correct certain things, right? When we came back if Dr. Kachi says that the people who came back from the NPDP, came back into the political, came back into the party, did not have spectacular qualities. I'm sorry, but he indicts himself. Because, like you said, we traverse this country together, you and I,
with the former member of the NPDP.
One of the people that you spoke about. So at that time, were you lying to the Nigerian people?
No, at that time I believed in unity and inclusiveness.
Can I finish? Can I finish? Were you lying to the Nigerian people when you said he had spectacular qualities to lead this country? Suddenly, because he's from one part of the country, he has no longer spectacular qualities. When Dr. Saraki was leading this Senate, the 8th Senate, spectacularly, and intervening on behalf of Nigerians, and passing the most amount of bills ever passed by his Senate, and pulling people together, he wasn't spectacular. When Dr. Saraki was appointed as chairman of the National Reconciliation Committee and has gone from north to south, east to west, trying to pull our party back together to ensure that we have a party machinery that is capable of winning an election, he's not spectacular. We shouldn't say that because we want to push an agenda that we're unable to say things as they are. They're spectacular members of the PDP in the north and the south, in the east and the west. What people like me, what people like Dr. Saraki are saying is that let us put our party in order, ensure that we put forward our best foot. It isn't about where the person, it shouldn't be. It should be about who can win us this election. After we win this election, who can govern this country and bring us back from the morals that the APC has put us to, from the 8 years of misrule that the APC has put us to. That's what we should be talking about. This conversation that we're talking about, this conversation that we've had for the past 40 minutes is exactly why Nigeria is the way it is. This is the reason why we have.
This conversation will resume after a minute. Thank you very much for staying with us. It is quite a hot one today, and I'm sure you're loving it. We'll be right back after just a short break. Stay with us.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing how zoning is going to play out within the PDP, but not only the PDP, but also the APC. In 2015, many Nigerians remember that the APC said they have no business with zoning. But less than 8 years later, they are now having to deal with zoning all over again. They're having to zone not only elective positions for national offices, but elective positions within the party itself. Happily, the PDP has had this experience for 16 years before them. But how much will that pay for the PDP? Which is what we're discussing today. Yes. We know that experience the PDP has. He introduced an important dimension. Yes. That are we going to, because in British politics, for example, if you look at the Labour Party, people keep saying, okay, get the most leftist person, where you say you are against everything, but you don't win the election. That the whole essence of a political party is to win an election. That's the whole business. So if it is to win an election, and Nigeria's electoral mathematics is complex.
Yes.
How do you square zoning with this electoral mathematics?
Well, if it's to win election, for the PDP to win, it has to have a certain candidate. He was talking about what I did in 2019. I did that because as a party man, we understood the zoning. In 2019, we agreed to zone to the north. And that was why, as he rightly pointed out, I worked with him. And I went around with a northern candidate that I chose because we zoned to the north. But now that it's over, 8 years is over for the north, it's not the turn of the south. And that's why I'm here now disagreeing with him and tell him,
thank you.
It is not the turn of the
Mr.
south.
Elimina,
It's as simple as that.
Let me ask this question before you respond. I think Dr. Kachi is saying one simple thing. Where does zoning leave the Igbo presidency? That's what he's saying.
I think that it is imperative at a point in time that we would include as many people as possible into presidency, into high elective office. I actually believe that, and it is important. But I'm also faced with a conundrum. I'm from the north central part of the country. If we say, okay, it is imperative that we must do Igbo presidency, I'm from one of the most tribalistically fragmented parts of the country. Are we going to come back and say it's time to do Idoma presidency, Igala presidency, Nupe presidency? Are we going to come back and say that we have to go to the Angas, the Birom? Are we going to come back and say that we have to go tribe by tribe across the whole country, and that until we complete that, there will not be a feeling of justice everywhere? That there will not be a feeling of equity and inclusion everywhere? Or are we going to at some point say that because of Nigeria's cultural diversity, because of Nigeria's multifaceted ethnic background, that instead we have to find a president who can give development to everybody? Should that be the criteria? If our people feel, should we be asking ourselves that if our people feel development, they will feel included? And they will think that the only way, they will stop thinking that the only way any development is going to come to them, the only way any inclusion is going to come to them, is unless one person from their place or from their state or from their region is president. And that is a foundational problem. And we have to resolve that problem. If we do zoning now, if we continue placing premium on zoning, we're just kicking the can down the road. We have to face that problem at some point or the other. We have to face it and overcome it. What better time to face it and overcome it than now? Really, when we face an existential crisis. When post-Buhari, whoever must be president, has to midwife a conversation amongst our ethnically diverse people to say, we need to discuss what are we putting into this union called Nigeria? What are we getting out of it?
But isn't Igbo presidency part of that discussion?
Presidency for everywhere. If you put it that way, I'm Igala from the North Central. We feel excluded. We've never produced even a vice president before. We've never produced a speaker of the National Assembly before, of the House of Representatives, or a president of the Senate. Okay, so we feel excluded. And so we're saying, okay, zone it to us. That's not the way to build a country. That's not the way to build a nation. That cannot be. Listen to me. Dr. Suleiman.
Yes, go ahead.
They are capable, competent Igbo men with character, with value, high value. People who, on a ballot, I will go out and vote for. But I'd rather be here. The same manner I've always been when I agitate for any president. I'd rather be here talking about competence. I'd rather be here talking about character. I'd rather be here talking about capacity.
Thank you very much. So isn't there a different way, a different mechanism, a different, say, form in which the idea of the Igbo presidency can be pushed? Because, for example, earlier, a few months ago, when the governors in the north and the governors in the south, if you remember, the northern governors, the southern governors forum
Yes.
held a meeting and said that, oh, the president must come from the south. And then the northern governors also held a meeting and said, oh, the president must also, they said this is unconstitutional. That is not in the constitution. So is there not a different way of persuading your fellow citizens over what you want, rather than demand?
Well, it's as you rightly said, and to also correct what he's saying, Igalas have been something big, you know, because an Igala man from Onitsha came here and became something big at the House of Reps. Don't forget, the largest concentration of richest Igala people today are in Onitsha. About 22% of Onitsha is Igala. That's why Onitsha has
And became
triple
who?
heritage.
Who was this person, please?
Well, I will take you through that. So when you start talking about Igala, don't forget, 22% of Onitsha is Igala. So the Igala have gotten so much because Onitsha has triple heritage of the Igala who are there and the Umeze Chima who came from
It's
Benin.
not difficult
Now,
to see that
on
because of the River Niger? Or go on.
No, but that is just a fact. If he doesn't know, that's
Go
his
ahead.
issue.
No.
Now, what I'm trying to tell you, hold on, please, I wouldn't want to go through that. I could teach you the history later on. What I'm trying to talk about is the issues of inclusion. I'm happy that you have, when you threw the question to him about how do we do, as I'm talking to you right now, all the former heads of state, Babangida, Abdul Salami, Obasanjo, stakeholders all over the north, said, okay, let us now use this to build cohesion and unity. Who we haven't said no? Some Northerners who do not want to recognize Buhari's presidency. They also work for Buhari to become president. And what we're asking him is, accept it. Buhari's presidency is legitimate. And that presidency, 8 years, is that of the North. Don't say he doesn't exist. Of course he did exist. We're still in it. So if Buhari has done 8 years of president and he finishes, it goes to the South. Why would you who work to bring him to power suddenly don't recognize that you should take responsibility for what you've done? And we're thinking about this being a representative democracy where we include all sections of the society. Why would you not want inclusion? Why will anybody who wants to be a leader be against equity, justice, and fairness? And instead, you're telling me rhetorics of who is this, who is that. Tell me who do you have that is better than the man who's been former Senate president, that the man who's been the best governor we've had in Anambra, that the man who has taken the very best pharmaceutical company to where it should be. We have champions, so don't tell me stories about that. We have the best. And if you want the best, I'll give you the best. But don't tell me stories. What do the other people have? The country belongs to all of us. That's why I told you this is not about politics. It's about Nigeria. It's about building an inclusive enterprise where there is equity, fairness, and justice for all.
Some people would say that they have had this argument before.
Of course.
That in 2011, some people were saying that, oh, okay, there's no zoning.
In 2011?
In 2011.
What? No, I'm sorry, no.
In 2011.
No.
In 2011.
I will tell you what happened.
Some people were saying that in the PDP were saying that there's no zoning.
Yes.
That, that it is not there in the constitution. And these were the same people that are now saying, okay, zoning is now accepted.
I'm going to.
How does that
can
kind
I
of thing
correct
work?
you? In 2011,
Yes.
former President Goodluck Jonathan had just succeeded late President Musa Yar'Adua.
Yes.
And there were agitations in the northern part of the country to say power ought to remain in the north by reason of late President Yar'Adua's demise and his inability
And as
to
part of the
complete
zoning
his tenure.
idea.
No, as part of the zoning argument.
Okay.
President Goodluck Jonathan, led by former President Obasanjo, traveled the country, encouraged people, said support him. There were conversations at the time of him having signed an agreement saying he was going to do one tenure and power was going to go back to the north. Right? There were conversations at the time.
Around that, yes.
Yes. In 2015, he contested for re-election. And people said, hold on, there was a violation in 2011. if we're going to come down to that conversation, the first violation of the zoning principle came in 2011. If we're going to go to that conversation, if you want to go further, there was another violation in 2015.
Okay.
But you see, I'll come here,
But
Dr.
my
Suleiman.
question is that those who were responsible for that violation in 2015 are those who are also the most vociferous and standing for zoning now.
No.
Okay.
There were people who said you signed an agreement you were not going to contest for a second term. Not only are you now contesting, you're trying to contest unilaterally. Remember, there were issues around that. Only one form was printed. Let's not act like we've forgotten history. But, Dr. Suleiman, I'm saying to you all this history so that I will come to this conclusive point. Where has that brought us as a nation? Having spoken about zoning and inclusion and your turn and my turn, we're still as divided as ever.
Yeah.
At some point, we must be able to say, maybe this isn't working. At some point, we must be able to say, oh, maybe we should focus instead on competence and character and capacity. That's the point where I am. That's the point where I'm advocating from. See, listen, Nigeria cannot be this divided along religious and ethnic lines, along regional lines, along all sorts of demarcations. Even if you go into the southeast, you will see people doing Aguleri and Umuleri. You see people saying Anglican versus Catholic. If you come to the southwest, you see people doing Ife and Modakeke. If you come to the north central, the age-long arguments between the Tiv and the Jukuns have been there. If you go up north, between they tell you about settlers and nomads. When we do this and we say zone so that we make people feel included, we're still a terribly, terribly, terribly divided country. Let me tell you why people rely on zoning to advocate for access to power, to advocate for access to resources, when resources are scarce. When resources are scarce, we retreat into all sorts of cleavages to advance our cause for giving us access to those resources over other people's. So if you made the resources more, if you grew the pot, if people knew that regardless of where I'm from, regardless of who I worship, regardless of the language I speak, I will have a fair, equitable opportunity, a democratic opportunity to the improvement of my life and my well-being, the zoning conversation will die a gradual but sure natural death. It only continues to exist because there's an inequitable level of access to resources.
That's interesting. You've made quite a forceful point there. And I think Dr. Kachi will have the last word just before we go off the program.
Yes.
And the question is, why are politicians? Because whether it is the position is zoned or not zoned, this is only at the party level. The candidate will still have to compete with his counterpart from the other party, from the second party. And Nigerians are not going to say, okay, because this particular candidate came out of zoning, let us vote for that one. They will vote for whomever campaign the best or whomever they think has the best answer. So the question is, why are politicians in the PDP particularly, why are they afraid of elections? Why can't they just say, okay, let's go for elections? Why not? What's the fear of elections? Why do people want to get power through the back doors?
No, it's not a matter of through the back door because the way the society is. Nigeria is not a nation. Nigeria is a country. When we fuse together, become a nation, this rhetorics about ideals will become normal. Right now, we're still transiting. We're transiting from where the military gave us a command system to an inclusive democracy. So the democracy, don't forget, quota is a part of our law. Federal character is part of our law. We do that to carry everybody along. So why will the quota and federal character, which we did to carry the North along due to the issue about education not being same between North and South, suddenly, those who are now beneficiaries of the quota system And I say, you know they do not want anymore. You know that very well. If you put the vote to the entire north of Nigeria, they will say they will want Quota to stay. They will want Farakarato to stay. You know that. So why will a few individuals, just because of their personal ambitions, now think Nigeria doesn't matter? Nigeria matters, my brother. So that's what I'm saying. We should look at the country. The country comes first. And that's why I say any society that seeks peace and unity must embrace equity, fairness, and justice. Anybody that works against those things is an enemy of an orderly society.
Thank you very much. I think.
Thank you very much for having me.
Final word. I have to.
We'll finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kachi, for coming on this show. Thank you also, Mr. Elomania, for coming on this show.
Thank you very much.
It's really been fantastic having the two of you here. And I hope that maybe in the near future, we will have you, maybe not necessarily the same time, I mean, on the same day, but we'll definitely be inviting you over again.
I'm grateful
on this program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you also, our viewers, for staying with us. Like we say, it's because you always come out to watch us, to view us, to follow us. We also strive to bring you the most interesting discussions, the most interesting analysis and insights on Nigerian politics, policy, and governance. We hope you will join us again. Tomorrow we'll bring you another edition of Daily Politics. My name is Suleiman Suleiman.